Hey, this is Francisca, and this is my mid-crisis life. So I had this really interesting conversation with my friend the other day. Uh, the conversation itself wasn't massively interesting, but the thoughts that it evoked were really interesting for me. So she was telling me about a child that she knows who is going through puberty very late. He's like 21, something like that, and is is now beginning to kind of rebel in a really serious way. So she was talking about, being really worried about his mental health and made a comment that was something like, oh, he won't even go to football anymore. And he's done that his whole life. And it made me think about, yeah, isn't that kind of the point? He's done it his whole life. Like, maybe he doesn't want to do that anymore. It made me think about that whole idea of like puberty. And I've spoken about it on a different video, and I'll put it up here if anybody's interested. But in a nutshell, it's talking about how puberty is a rejection of everything that you've previously ever been, right? So it's you making a decision at that age, and that's why puberty happens over a span of time, to say, actually, I don't want to be what you've molded me into. Thank you very much, mum and dad, caregivers, or whoever, right? I'm going to be my own person. And actually, because I don't know what that means, and because I only know who you've taught me to be, I'm going to be the exact opposite of what it is that you've brought me up to be, because I don't actually know that there's a whole variety of different options over there. All I know is that you want me to be kind, so I'm not going to be kind. I'm going to be the opposite of kind because I don't know that there's all these other options. And then I'm going to kind of like swing from one extreme to the other while I figure out who it is that I want to be. I'm definitely not being who you want me to be. And it made me think a lot about that and about like what this process of puberty is, right? And thinking about this young man who's going through this period now. And my friend even said it to myself, like, he's going through a really late stage puberty, right? And this road is so busy. He's going through a really late stage puberty. And I think, having thought about it, I think there's two different types of puberty. I think that there's a physical puberty, and I think that there's an emotional puberty. Um, and I think that physically, we can go through those kind of physiological changes. We can go through the changes in our body, the changes to our whatever. I'm not gonna tell everybody what puberty is. I'm sure everybody's been there, right? But we can go through those physiological changes. But I think that there is also an emotional change that happens that denotes what I was just talking about. And I think the reason why it's so difficult for parents and why there's such friction and why puberty is so fractious is because parents find it difficult to let go. They find it difficult to let go of the version of their child that they have been molding and shaping for the entirety of that child's life until they've reached this point of rebellion, this point of pushback. And they find it difficult to let go of the fact that their child is no longer malleable because this child is now molding themselves. Like, they won't be malleable to you anymore because they're trying to mold themselves. And I think that that's where a lot of the time parents become very controlling. And I think that's a lot to do with like trusting your child, firstly, that they're able to make a good decision. But I also think it's about trusting yourself more deeply than that, that you've done enough to be able to trust that your child can then make a good decision, that you've implemented enough in their life, that you've given enough wisdom, that you've given enough whatever it is, right? to support your child in being able to take those steps and you not having to mold them. And I think, yeah, there is a lot of stuff about, the environment that we live in and people on the streets and, gang culture and I don't know, whatever, kidnappers and just all of that stuff. I understand that that's real, but for me, that's kind of like heuristic association. The likelihood of some of these things happening to your children are just so low, but the fear that you feel around them, it's like, for example, believing that your plane is going to crash. You're more likely to step out in the road and get run over. You're more likely to get into a car crash than your plane ever crashing. But because we hear about it and it's these big things and it's these big catastrophic events that affect our emotions, we are associated to them in that way without it necessarily being like a rational fear. And I get all of that's the case. But I think a lot of the time it's more internal than that. I think there's a massive feeling of loss and bereavement that happens when your child rejects you, when your child rejects everything that you've tried to help them to be up until that point. Because really, actually, the thing that you're trying to help your child to be is the person that you could never be, right? The things that you never got given, the way that you never got parented. So you're really just molding your child into who you would wish to be and living kind of vicariously through them in that sense, right? So there's like this mourning, there's the loss of your actual child, there's a loss of your inner child, there's a loss of this future child, there's a lot of bereavement that happens. But what I would say is what I've noticed, particularly with Callum, because of where I was at in my mind and in my emotional state and my psychological state when I had him and as I was raising him, I've noticed, I think, honestly, that he went through that kind of like emotional puberty at a much younger age. And I may be completely wrong. Shit might hit the fan in the next like year or so because he's about to turn 14. But I would say as a 14-year-old, other than like that kind of like physical thing of like having testosterone and being angry for a reason that he doesn't really understand, or, just everything being boring and everything being meh, I would say other than that, he's a pretty well-grounded, well-rounded individual. He doesn't really feel the need to like assert himself, to assert his authority or assert his independence or his own agency or his own autonomy. He doesn't feel that because there's not really much that he has to push back against. I think throughout his life, I think from a young age, actually, I realized like Callum cannot be controlled. Like Callum cannot be controlled. Like you can fight and fight and fight, but his willpower will certainly outlast mine for sure. Like, because I'm just like, whatever. I don't care. Like, I'm not that fucking invested to be sat here like at loggerheads with you, like fucking billy goats about things. And that just sounds like he's really spoiled, but he's not. He's really not. Like, I think I learned from a young age, he's very headstrong, and I could spend my entire life fighting him and trying to control him. Or I could just let him do his thing and let him figure it out himself. And he's had to make his own mistakes, and he's had to learn from those mistakes, and I've had to be like, you said that you wanted to do it. Like, what do you want from me? Like, I gave you some advice. I said I didn't think this was a good idea for this exact reason, and I'm not telling you so. I'm just saying, babe, like, live and learn. That kind of consequential based parenting, and yeah. So he's kind of gone through the throes of being like, I'm not gonna be who you want me to be, and me being like, okay, like. I have some really basic expectations of him, which are based on my fundamental values, and that's why I find like when I do put my foot down, when I do ask my son to do something, I can often say to him, bro, like, I don't often tell you what to do. Like, I don't often say, no, you will be doing this. So if I ask you, like, you need to be here at this time, or you need to come and do this thing, or you need to come and deal with this. Like, come and do it. Like, just have that basic level of respect that you're going to come and do that, because I don't put it on you. I don't have all of these expectations. And I think it speaks a lot to what my friend was saying to me when we were talking about this. She was saying, that she learnt with her eldest son, who was very boisterous and very headstrong, and then making very poor decisions throughout his adolescence. And she was beside herself, like trying to control this kid, and not trying to control him, but like trying to save him and buffer him. And she's like got a very big savior complex. And she spent so much of her energy trying to do this, right? And she said that she realizes now that that was way more about her than it was about him. It was way more about her feeling out of control, way more about her not being able to micromanage everything that was going on around her, because she feels anxious when she's not able to put everything in its place and everybody isn't in their place. Like, and it's not like she's psychopathic about that sort of thing, but that is a definite need for her. It's a definite like need that has not been fulfilled somewhere. So when her child was out of control, she was completely out of control and couldn't just stand by with love and be like, okay, I'm going to be here, you know? And I think it's like a combination of those two things. And I think it's going to happen at any point in time. It's going to happen at some point in time, right? That your child is going to turn around and is going to try and reject who they've previously been. And my son did do that. He did it at like 11. He was like, he's usually a very polite, well-spoken, very mature young man. But he went through a phase for about a year where he was just being an absolute fucking knobhead. just chatting absolute shit all the time, like, and wanting to swear and wanting to show off and wanting to be this guy. Like, he's the guy, he wants to be the guy. And I was just like, all right, whatever. Like, good for you. Like, I hope that you're enjoying this character that you've put on for now. After a while, lo and behold, he kind of just got over it and he moved on. And I think it really helped actually that he was in a school where they weren't like, oh, this is anti-social behavior. You need to be in referral. You need to be in detention. You need to be suspended from education. It's like, no, they're just kids. Like, they're just kids being kids. Like, 12-year-old boys are dickheads. 13-year-old boys are dickheads. 14-year-old boys are dickheads. Like, why are you punishing them for it? His school was just like, yep, that seems about right. You seem like you're right on time there, mate, in the way that you're behaving. So, well done. Carry on, whereas, I think the more mainstream schools, particularly here in England, in the UK, they're very much like that behaviour is completely unacceptable. We will not accept that kind of language. We will not accept that kind of action. And it's just kind of like, just fucking let them be, man. The more you do that, the more they want to say, fuck you. Yeah? Fuck you. You won't just let me be me. You won't just let me try on this fucking outfit, try on this character for a little while and see what it's like. And then realize for myself, yeah, I'm not down. But I'll give you a prime example. My son, when he was, must have been 11. He was 11. And he used to do this thing where he'd play games and he would rage quit. Like, and I'd hear him in his room, and he'd be like punching the table, whatever. And for me, that's really triggering, because I've been in some like abusive relationships with people who are like that, who use like their voice and their physicality to create intimidation. And for me, it's really, really triggering. It makes me feel like my dad was the same as well. I'm like, okay, I can't. So I'd be in there like, you need to stop. This is completely unacceptable behavior. And we had a big row about it one day. I call it a row. It was mainly just me having a pop. And anyway, after I'd said everything that I said, I went outside and I was like, you know what, I need to calm down. I need to calm down. I went away, I calmed down, and I figured out, oh, this is actually more about me. This is more about me than it is about him. It is about him, and I am trying to teach him. I want him to learn something, but actually, it's more about like me and me being triggered. So I went in there and I had a chat with him about it, and I explained to him, this is the reason why I'm going to ask you as a person who understands that about me, as another person who lives with you, to take consideration, yeah, when you're behaving like that, because I thought that that is way more impactful than being like your behavior is completely unacceptable. Anyway, so within the midst of the conversation, he said to me, Mum, the thing is I will do that and I will try and remember that. He said, but what you need to understand, Mum, is that every time you come in here, yeah, and you stop me from being angry, you never let me reach the point where I've had enough myself. I have to get to a point where I've had enough of doing it myself, and then I will stop. And the funny thing is, once I left him to his own devices, within 3-4 weeks, he was done. And he doesn't do it anymore. He doesn't rage quit. He doesn't get pissed off. He manages himself. And when he feels himself getting to that point, he's like, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break and put this down. I think I'm going to go play something else. I think I'm going to get up and do something else rather than sit here and push and push and push myself, because he's learned his own limits. And I think that's a really important thing. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. What's my point? I think my overall point is thinking about how, and I guess it's applicable to anything, right? How, when people change, when people evolve, when people shed old versions of themselves, when people are lost, when people are trying to figure out who they are or whatever, right? When those things are happening and you see it happening, how is it that you respond to that? Do you respond by trying to grab more control of this thing, to have more control of this person? Do we try and save them? Do we try and love them through smothering them? Do we let them do their own thing but really hope that they fail so that we can be right and we can be like, see, I told you there was no point you even trying? Or do we, with love, kind of like stand with them and watch them go on that journey, Because I think it's such a more powerful way to be in relationship with other people. And I think it's easier to do that when you understand what is my motivation for wanting this person to do or not do this thing. What really actually is that about? Is it about them or is it about me? So yeah, I think that's all. So something I'm really grateful for off the back of that. I'm really grateful that I've had an opportunity to raise a child with my full consciousness. Maybe not my full consciousness, no, but with more consciousness than I raised my first child. And, I still think I did a pretty good job there, considering they said he wouldn't walk or talk or feed himself or have any quality of life, and he's like doing his thing. Like, I think I did okay. Uh, but having the opportunity to kind of really know who I am and have figured some stuff out internally so that I didn't spew that all over my own child is something that I'm really, really, really grateful for. Really grateful. And I hope that it will come to fruition. And if it doesn't, then also it doesn't. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to go watch him play football now.